Welcome to Business Talk, presented in collaboration with the University of Rio Grande and the Ohio State University South Centers, from the heart of southeastern Ohio at the University of Rio Grande TV studio. Our goals are simple: promote the University of Rio Grande and the Ohio State University South Centers, as well as advocate local small business and their support organizations. More importantly, promote southeastern Ohio as a wonderful place to live, explore, and learn. There are many different ways you can find us. The University of Rio Grande Cable Access Channel 17, live online at blogtalkradio.com, and on YouTube if you are unable to catch our show live. Introducing our co-hosts, Jason Winters, Mike Thompson, Patrick Dengel. Thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoy the show.
Hey, we have a very special guest with us today, Mr. Stanley Evans, who is a registered investment advisor, and he owns Evans Wealth Management Group here in Gallipolis. And we're going to be talking about financial planning, investing, and several other topics today. If you look around our studio, you'll notice a few things are different. Behind the mic today, we have Patrick. Patrick, how's it feel to sit in Mike's seat?
And if I could find the right button, I would be doing well.
Mike, we know that you are out there somewhere. For all of you who know Mike, you know that he loves to ride his motorcycle. And so he was taking some vacation time, and he was going to do a road trip. So do you know where he was going, Pat?
Down to Cincinnati or Dayton, I believe. And he was going to go there. I don't know if he was going to wear his kilts. He is a motorcycle rider that likes to ride in a kilt.
I don't know where to go with that one.
Yeah. Well, he's heard them all, trust me. But yeah, so he is not with us today, and we miss you, Mike. So safe travels, return safely. But we have Pat behind the controls. So bear with us. I'm sure Patrick will do a fine job today. But
I'm not sure which buttons to change, etc. But it's our great fortune to have a really good guest on the program today.
So Stan, why don't you open by telling us a little bit about yourself? Where are you from? Tell us about your family and how you got into financial planning.
Thanks, Jason. Well, first of all, I ended up getting registered in the industry in 1983. Got my Series 7. I was very, very young, and ended up starting to work for the Ohio company, and that was a regional firm in Columbus and Gallipolis. Merrill Lynch recruited me, so I worked for Merrill Lynch for over a decade. Last stop was with Merrill Lynch in Chicago. Ran the Western Division for Merrill Lynch, and I was leaving on Friday morning from my farm in Oak Hill, or on Monday morning my farm from Oak Hill, commuting to Chicago, and coming home on Friday nights. And about 2 years ago, I said enough of this. So I opened up my own investment advisory practice. I've been married many years, I think 35 years. To Brenda Evans. She's a registered nurse and works for Southern Ohio Medical Center in Portsmouth. I have a son who's a school teacher in Columbus, Ohio, a daughter in law school in Columbus, and a son who's in the funeral home industry.
Excellent.
Yeah. So we started to practice in Gallipolis, and things are just going terrific. And thank you for having me in here this morning.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
You know, health management is something that a lot of people have a lot of confusion about, or they have their own ideas. It's rather interesting. I have a gentleman, the last 10 years of his working career, he played the stock market. And I have known another individual that is getting to retire. They're just starting to save. So I would imagine that you have found a lot of individuals with unique savings.
It really has varied, and you know, as we talked over lunch, there's some misnomers about or misunderstandings about what role a financial advisor, investment advisor plays in taking care of clients. By far, the clients and the prospects who walk into our office, they come in because they have a concern, a need, not because of a desire to play in the market. That just doesn't exist. It is because they have a life experience that's taking place. It might be a grandchild born. It could be they had a parent who passed away. It could be that somebody needs to go into a nursing home and strategically they have to think about placement of assets, estate planning issues, college planning. And our role is to serve those clients to help them fulfill that dream or goal and give them some peace of mind. Surrounding that, we try to do so by we ask a lot of questions, but we try to unravel where they are in their life with their current situation, right? And then understand what their interpretations of risk are, and then put together properly asset allocated portfolios that we manage.
Let me ask you this, Stan. What do you mean by risk?
Very, very good question. To most people, it is, for a lot of people, risk is loss of money. But risk carries on various connotations. Risk is outliving your money. Risk is the volatility of movement of the market, and at an inappropriate time when you're going to retire, you want to buy your first house, or you need to pay down debt or put the kids through school, that you've got exposure to the volatility of the marketplace. Risk is too short of a time horizon, and you're not going to be able to retire like your dad did or your mother did. You're going to have to work until 75 or 70 or 68 when your brother or a sibling or your dad retired at 62. There's all sorts of elements of risk. And so we try to unravel that and then put together structures so that we get performance, but only to the extent of the risk tolerance that a client explains to us after we profile them in-depthly. I know that it's not really complicated, but we have probably well over 100 clients and manage several $1 million in assets. And clients fall into different buckets of what their asset allocation looks like. And then I manage those portfolios accordingly. And I will never, and way I certainly manage risk is, and that's what builds trust, is you never deviate of how much exposure they have to equities and bonds and different classes of securities. Through good times and bad, good markets or bad markets, you don't deviate from that, and that discipline carries them through. I never have a client call me to even discuss selling out of the equity markets in a volatile market, down market or up market. The only time we make changes is when they need money to pay a bill or need money for tuition, need money, their monthly check for home. But there's no such term in our office of buying and selling securities and timing the market. Those type of things really don't exist in our office.
Well, I know a lot of our listeners probably don't understand the differences in risk, but technically there's risk involved in everything.
True.
I mean, even you get the most safest. That's your savings account that you have in a bank. Well, that's pretty safe. FDIC insures you to what now? $200,000 if you're married.
Joint and single. And
okay,
it
so
varies.
it sounds good, but you're receiving a fraction of a percent of interest.
Right.
And inflation is running now at 3 to 4%.
Well, that's probably one of the more difficult goals and objectives to fulfill is how do you take somebody who's living off their money, right?
Mm-hmm.
Usually in retirement. They're accustomed to owning certificates of deposit and getting a monthly check. And when those certificates of deposit mature right now, their alternatives are 20 basis points or 0.5% or 0.75%, and it is and you can't replace that. And unfortunately, there are horror stories of people being convinced that they need to go from certificates of deposit into the stock market, because some stocks pay good dividends.
They do.
But they aren't explained the volatility that sometimes comes with that. There's interest rate risk. Interest rate risk is somebody goes and buys a 10-year corporate bond or municipal bond or treasury bond, locks in that interest rate, and then interest rates start creeping up. The value of their principal could be 90 cents on the dollar or 80 cents on the dollar. That's called interest rate risk. And so people have to be careful not to lock in long term to get another 1% on their money, or they will pay the price on the principal value.
So as a financial analyst, what you're really doing is you're sitting down with a client and you're trying to determine how much risk propensity do they have. Can they handle taking a risk? Can they handle losing money to make money? Or do they need to set in something really secure and not make as much?
Right. I think there are several things we try to interpret to come up with risk tolerance. Is what's the liquidity needed with this money? Are they going to be the primary caregiver of a parent, both financially and emotionally? Are they going to be the primary source of funding for children's or grandchildren's education? What they do in 2008 when the market was off so far? How did they react?
Sure.
Do they have other expenses they need to be paying down that are non-deductible, like large automobile loans or large loans that don't have tax advantages on the interest? So should we be paying down debt with the assets? And it also depends on their age. They come in there and they knock on my door at 50 in their interpretation of risk, and they knock on my door at 22 and don't have anything. Our discussions are different. 3 weeks ago, I had a lady pay for 1 hour for her nephew and his new bride to come in and sit with me for a couple hours to talk about just good old fundamental getting started, newly married. What do you do? Paying bills, one bank account, change the beneficiaries, contribute to the retirement plan, don't take on too much debt, pay off your credit cards every month, the things that we should have been told back in those days, right?
Well, I think probably when we were in their shoes, we had that advice. I know I did growing up. My father was very proactive about teaching financial management, and we were taught some of that in school. You're not taught a lot of that in school.
No. Well, it's just this young they were 28 and 30, and they just thought about keeping separate bank accounts. They just weren't taught some of those things. So the aunt, who's a friend of ours, just said, go spend a couple hours with me and tell them what you need to tell them. So they're getting off on the right foot. I hold them accountable. We held a second meeting. They had to tell me what progress they made. I also gave them some calculations that I want. For example, they're going to be buying their first home, right? Mm-hmm. Nobody should have. If somebody takes a look at their monthly income and looks at what their monthly mortgage is, the insurance on that house, the property taxes on that house, principal and interest, that principal and interest and monthly mortgage and housing costs shouldn't be any more than 28% of their monthly income. So you can do the math backwards. I can take then, if they haven't bought the house yet, I can go in backwards and figure out how much house they can afford. Mm-hmm. Then you talk about, do they have a down payment, right? Do they have that 20% down so they don't have to pay some additional expenses to the bank? If they have 20% down, you can maybe negotiate a little better interest rate. So what's 20% of the house they can afford to keep within 28% of their monthly income? A. B, let's look at your monthly income. Can you afford to maximize a contribution to the 401k plan or the 403b plan if you're a teacher to supplement state teachers retirement or to supplement Social Security if you're working for a for-profit organization? So we do a lot of that, and I think you get a flavor for how much that is different than what we think of a stockbroker, right? Because you really get into talking about some of the life values and what people really think about and they talk to their spouse about when nobody's around. Those are some of the discussions we have in an office about what you want to do. We're going to sell this house when we retire. What are we going to do with mom and dad's house on their passing? You know, is mom and dad's will up to date? Or long-term care. You know, everybody knows somebody that goes into a nursing home. After those first 100 days, who's going to pay for that? You know, or in Southern Ohio, you know, there's a lot of Medicaid, but there's a lot of people who have high net worth that aren't going to be eligible for Medicaid. So if you're on Medicare and you're in a nursing home, who's going to make that private payment? And so, as I said earlier, time is your biggest friend when you do planning, because you got this wonderful thing called compounding. You've got time to let things play out. It's whenever you're at 60 or 65 and you're thinking, what do I do now? It's too late to make mistakes. You can finance an education, but you can't finance retirement.
Yeah, speaking of education, are you finding that student loans are becoming an integral part of somebody's portfolio? Or
Well, student loans are definitely out there, but I also know I know a lot of parents who have paid for the kids' education, and they've figured out a way through it. I know a lot of parents who have their kids taking some freshman level classes while they're still in high school, and that's free money, and they ought to take advantage of that. But you know, it's just a fact of life, especially if you go to a private school. But if a kid has to hoof the bill themselves, they're going to have some loans, and they have to deal with that.
So Evans Wealth Management is sitting on 2nd Avenue right in front of the park in Gallipolis. And I think what we're talking about here is your client doesn't need $1 million to walk in the door and take advantage of your services. You're there for just about everybody.
We have a lot of clients. And I've got written down in some legal mumbo jumbo that I had to file that my minimum account size is like $25,000 or $30,000. Our average account size right now is probably certainly over $100,000, but that doesn't mean that I don't have the desire or the time to meet with people that need some direction and help. We hold several appointments a week, both in our office and in people's homes. I live outside of Oak Hill, so I've got drive time to be thinking about my day when I drive down to Gallipolis, right? And I do have a brand new assistant in my office, marketing and administrative assistant. Her name is Christina White, and I understand that everybody knows her. Right?
Absolutely.
She volunteers and works for the farmers market in Gallia County, and she's good to have on board.
She'll do a fine job, and I'm sure that she's listening right now, or she will be listening when we're out on YouTube. So, Christina, congratulations.
Just a quick question. Are you finding that individuals are not planning as they should be, especially in the younger years?
By default, that's true, because at the time they're supposed to be contributing to a retirement plan and really get the leverage of time is also the time that they are paying a big truck or car payment. They are dating, so they're spending their money on weekends. They're maybe buying their first house, or they're renting. They're paying down student debt. And they can't, and quite frankly, the light bulb doesn't come on to be worried about retirement until the 50th birthday. So at the 50th birthday, you all of a sudden think about, when am I going to exit this place? Am I doing everything I can? I can assure you at 23 or 24 or 25, there's nobody in this room that thought about retirement. And so Oftentimes it's the parent who starts thinking about it and talking about it for their children. I opened up the typical educational product for young adults now is called a 529 program. And a 529 is nothing more other than the IRS code that if that money in that 529 is used for the education of the kid, that money is not taxable. So there's great advantages to it. So last week somebody came in and opened up a 529 for his 2 granddaughters, put $1,000 in each, right? But he'll contribute $500 a month for the next several years. So it's not usually the kid who thinks about it, those things. But when it comes to retirement, it's usually a mom or a dad if I see a kid who's already contributed to the 401k or 403b plan at work, and they're 23 or 24 or 26, it's either they have got the most mature thoughts about it, or a mom or dad or a grandparent has influenced them.
One of the things that I have found more often than not is that when an individual gets out of college and they're starting their career, they are in debt with student loans.
Right.
They are in debt with getting the latest and greatest automobiles. Maybe they've been living on campus, or maybe they've been living with their parents. But it is expensive out in the area, and especially individuals that are starting a new family. What are some recommendations you might have, and if somebody's budget is really tight, how can they start?
Well, I think first and foremost, have they completed their education? Can they get retrained in another job that will pay some more money? I know that sounds like it wouldn't be the typical direction to go to take on more debt, but there's a point where somebody has to have the courage, if they have the capability of doing it, to get retrained in another career that might pay them more money, A. B, have them come in, bring their complete budget in, and we're going to find holes in that budget that they find as a necessity, and I look upon it as a luxury. So you trim back the budget
Yes.
to bare bones,
Yep.
right? And then you find out, can they then, with little fat left, build up an emergency account. In financial planning, one of the premier things you do before you put portfolios together and talk about risk is making sure there is an emergency fund that is in place. If a person is married and both people are earning money, then you need 3 months equivalent of your fixed and variable expenses: housing, mortgage, gas for the car, groceries. You need 3 months. But if you're a single parent or you're married and only one person works, you need 6 months of fixed and variable expenses set aside in a liquid account. Then you can move forward with investing. Because if the storm door blows off, the tires go flat, or by gosh, I lose my job, then things don't fall apart for a few months at home. And so emergency, that's kind of a mantra of financial planning, is making sure the emergency fund is there for clients.
It's rather interesting. We have always told, or at least I've always told individuals that are starting a business that they need to have a good 1 year of funding. You know, do you find that, Jason?
For a business, that's pretty good advice, Pat, because you do want that little extra cushion, because the difference is closing your doors. So it's always nice if you can have that year, and that doesn't necessarily have to mean cash, but if you have a line of credit that can support you, that's good advice.
Yeah, well, credit cards are a line of credit.
Well, you got to be careful with credit
I
cards.
know. Yes, you're right.
The interest you're going to pay on those are going to kill you in the long run. So you want to make sure that you have a reasonable line of credit from a local lending institution
That's right.
that you're familiar with doing banking with, and go from there.
Very good. We only have a few more minutes. And we just started talking about some of the investment. What would you like to sort of touch upon this?
Two things. I want to talk to you about just the old saying is you can finance your home, your car, your child's education, but you can't finance retirement. I'll give you an example of the foundation of compounding that makes a true difference. If I have somebody walk in my office at age 30 and they start contributing $400 a month to their retirement plan at age 30 to age 62 when they retire, they're going to have $571,000 in that account. If they wait to age 45 to do the same thing but do the same amount at $400 a month, they're going to have $156,000 in that account at age 62. The idea of doing it 15 years earlier, they will pay in $72,000 more money, but they're going to have $415,000 more money because of compounding in time. The last thing I'll close with, how much time do I have?
You have 4.5 minutes.
This is the story of Jack and Jill, and it kind of brings to the forefront compounding. If everybody remembers the story of Jack and Jill, at age 18 he fell down and broke his crown, right? And he had head injuries, so he couldn't go to college, and he took a waiter's job. And Jack made enough money that he contributed $5,000 every year to his IRA, and he only did it for 8 years to age 26. So he had $40,000 in there up until age 26. His sister, who pushed him off the wall, went to medical school. So at age 26, she began her practice. She started contributing $5,000 every year to her IRA, but she did it for 40 years to age 65. So let me regress. Jack did it for 8 years. He put $40,000 in his IRA, but he did it earlier. Jill did it for 40 years, $5,000 a year, so she put $200,000 away, but she didn't start till later. Jack's IRA is worth $2,587,000, and Jill's is worth $2.2 million, even though she put in $160,000 more money earlier. The time value of money and the compounding of money, because he started earlier, gives him way more money than her, and she did it for 40 years. The fact is time is your biggest friend. It's not performance. It's time and getting started earlier. And it's the greatest gift you can give a loved one is to get started early, to be thinking about it. And that's who we talk to on an ongoing basis.
It sounds like a really good point that you are making. So I probably should start talking about my retirement.
Start, Pat. Pat, now I really have concerns about you teaching me my small business management class.
Oh, don't worry about it, Jason. I started 6 months ago.
Okay, on that note.
But on the same token, it is very important that individuals, just like Stan is saying, the sooner you start, at least talk with a professional like Stan. You don't necessarily have to make a commitment. I truly believe that individuals like Stan and other investment individuals, they have the interest best at heart. Yes, when we buy something, of course, we're going to be spending some money, etc. But perhaps that investment is well worth at least listening to.
Stan, it's been a pleasure having you on the show today, and we only have a couple more minutes. So why don't you tell our listening audience, if there's anyone out there that would like to contact you, what's the best way to reach you?
You can call me at 446-4200.
446.
4200. 4200.
4246.
446-4200.
4200.
Or they can email stan@stanevansfinancial.com.
Or stop by that nice new office that sits
Amen.
on 2nd Avenue, right in front of the city park and almost in front of the gazebo.
Free coffee?
Free coffee?
Free coffee. Hey,
All
Pat,
right. Yes,
sounds
we'll be
sounds
in
like to me we need to swing by there on our way to work every morning.
Do you know how the easiest way I found all of your websites and your Facebook was I typed in Evans Wealth Management,
Right.
and there was at least 5 or 6 different listings.
Well, I mean, I'm an old dinosaur, so to how we did that and how we grew it and be out there socially was with my previous sales assistant, and she did a great job in understanding social networking. And I don't want to quit the momentum, and I think Christina will continue the job.
I think she will too. Well, you've been listening to Business Talk today with Stan Evans. He is the owner of Evans Wealth Management here in Gallipolis. I'm Jason.
And I'm Patrick.
And I'm Stan.
Thank you for listening.